The PlayStation 2 wasn't just a console, it was a magician in disguise. Beneath that chunky black shell and modest 294 MHz CPU, lived a machine that could make the impossible feel effortless. Sure, we all remember the Final Fantasies and Kingdom Hearts. But today we're diving into a different realm. The forgotten, the overlooked, the RPGs that pushed the PS2 to its breaking point, yet somehow ran like a dream. These were the games that made you stop mid-quest, tilt your head, and wonder, wait, how is my PS2 even pulling this off? From jaw-dropping art direction to massive open areas that defied hardware limits. These gems not only tested the console's power, but also gave us worlds we still can't stop thinking about. So dust off that memory card, because we're about to revisit 10 RPGs that proved the PS2 was nothing short of magic. If you weren't deep into JRPG circles in the mid-2000s, chances are you missed this absolute treasure from Trius. On the surface, Radiata Stories looked like a charming, almost fairy tale RPG, with its bright colors and cartoony style. But the second you started exploring, you realized this game was hiding a technical beast under the hood. Nearly every NPC in its bustling city had their own daily schedule, waking up, working, eating, sleeping, and you could actually follow them around to watch it happen in real time. That's hundreds of characters with unique routines, all running on a PS2 without a single load screen between areas. The branching storyline, where your choices could completely change the fate of the world, felt like magic for the era. This wasn't just an RPG, it was a living, breathing world on hardware that had no business handling that kind of complexity. By the time Grandia III landed in 2006, the PS2 was already showing its age, but you'd never know it from looking at this game. The world map was an absolute stunner, with sweeping camera angles and lush environments that felt almost pre-rendered, except they weren't. And then there were the skies, vast, cloud-filled horizons where you could actually pilot your own plane between islands. The combat system, a lightning-fast cinematic twist on turn-based battles that somehow kept everything fluid without a hint of slowdown. The sheer scale of some of its bosses and spell effects pushed the PS2's GPU to the edge, yet it all ran so smoothly you'd swear it was from a newer console. Grandia III didn't get the mainstream love it deserved, but for those who played it, it was a perfect storm of gorgeous visuals, addictive gameplay, and how is this even possible? Moments. Level 5 didn't just make an RPG with Rogue Galaxy, they made a technical showpiece disguised as a space pirate adventure. This game had no loading screens, none. You could land on a planet, explore massive cities, trek into dangerous wilderness, and jump back to your ship without a single fade to black. For the PS2, that was unheard of. The environments were huge, the draw distances stretched far, and the detail and character animations felt way beyond the console's limits. Then there was the art direction, vibrant, anime-style visuals that somehow stayed razor-sharp, even in busy battles with multiple enemies. Flashy special attacks, and particle effects flying everywhere. Combine that with an intricate crafting system, space travel, and dungeons that felt endless. And you've got a game that made you look at your PS2 and wonder if it was secretly hiding PS3 hardware inside. While most RPG fans were busy with the big-name franchises, Shadow Hearts, Covenant quietly rewrote the rules of what a PS2 RPG could be. Set in an alternate history version of World War I, it mixed dark, gothic atmospheres with bizarre humor and deeply emotional storytelling. The real shocker was its Judgment Ring battle system, a timing-based mechanic that blended turn-based combat with reflex-based precision, giving every attack a tactile, arcade-like feel. Visually, it pushed the PS2 with richly textured environments drenched in moody lighting, fluid cutscenes, and monster designs that looked like they crawled out of a horror movie. The sheer amount of voice dialogue, branching events, and cinematic sequences was mind-blowing for a console with such limited disk space. This wasn't just another RPG, it was a surreal, ambitious experience that made you realize the PS2 could handle far more than most developers dared to attempt. Triace wasn't content with making just another RPG. Valkyrie profile to Maria looked like it was running on early PS3 hardware. The environments were jaw-droppingly detailed, from sweeping castle interiors to vast, glowing forests, all packed with high-resolution textures that somehow didn't tank the frame. The combat system was a unique blend of turn-based strategy and real-time positioning, letting you control multiple characters with precision while unleashing screen-filling special attacks. The game's particle effects, light bursts, magic trails, shimmering sword slashes were easily some of the most advanced visuals ever pulled off on the PS2. Even the story presentation felt high-budget, with fully voiced dialogue and cinematic camera work that rivaled CG cutscenes. It wasn't just a technical achievement, it was a visual statement that the PS2 still had plenty of fight left in it. Part RPG, part sandbox life sim, Steamot Chronicles was the kind of game that made you question if the PS2 even had limits. On paper, it was about piloting customizable steam-powered mechs called trotmobiles, but in practice, it was about freedom. You could join bands and perform live music, run delivery jobs, enter fighting tournaments, dig up fossils, gamble in casinos, even pick sides in a war, all in one seamless open world. The level of interactivity was absurd for the PS2, with a day-night cycle, destructible mech parts, and a full in-game economy. The graphics weren't just good for the time. They were crisp, colorful, and detailed. Even when towns were bustling with NPCs and your mech was throwing down in chaotic street battles, it felt less like a scripted RPG and more like a second life in an alternate, steam-powered reality, something no one expected the PS2 to pull off. While most RPGs of the era kept their worlds segmented, Dracon, the Ancient's Gates, handed you a massive, fully 3D open world to explore on the back of a fire-breathing dragon. The sheer scale was jaw-dropping for PS2 hardware. Vast mountain ranges, Dense forests, ancient ruins, and sprawling cities, all without the claustrophobic corridors other games relied on. You could seamlessly switch between on-foot sword combat and airborne dragon battles, raining fire down on enemies miles below. The draw distance was insane for 2002, with barely any fog to hide the horizon, and the soundtrack swelled to match the grandeur of the skies. It wasn't just technically impressive, it felt like you were living out a full-blown fantasy novel, the kind of freedom and spectacle you wouldn't expect until the next console generation. Long before stylized graphics became a way to hide hardware limits, Oakage, Shadow King proved the PS2 could turn art direction into pure magic. This quirky, Tim Burton-esque RPG wrapped its world in bold outlines, twisted architecture, and characters that looked like they'd stepped out of a gothic storybook. But under its charmingly odd visuals was a surprisingly large, fully explorable world with seamless towns, fields, and dungeons, all loaded with detail and personality. The real trick, it managed all this while keeping a smooth frame rate, even during flashy, turn-based battles packed with oversized enemy models and elaborate attack animations. The PS2 wasn't just rendering a game here, it was painting a surreal living canvas, proving that creativity could push hardware as much as raw horsepower. Most gamers know Skies of Arcadia from the Dreamcast, but few realize the PS2 actually got its own enhanced port in Japan, and that's where things get crazy. The original game's vast floating continents, massive ship-to-ship battles, and huge explorable sky world were already pushing the Dreamcast to its limit. Bringing all that to the PS2, with upgraded textures and extra content, was like stuffing an ocean into a bottle. The game lets you sail a fully customizable airship across an enormous open world, seamlessly transitioning from exploration to tactical, large-scale battles against enemy fleets. On top of that, the richly detailed towns and dungeons were packed with NPCs, hidden treasures, and side quests that could stretch your playtime into the hundreds of hours. It was a technical feat so few outside Japan even saw, and a heartbreaking reminder of just how much Western players missed out on. By the time Xeno Saga Episode 3 released in 2006, the PS2 was on its last legs, but you wouldn't know it looking at this game. It pushed the console to cinematic heights, with fully voiced cutscenes rivaling big-budget anime films, character models so detailed they looked ripped from the next generation, and sprawling sci-fi environments drenched in lighting effects that seemed impossible on a DVD. Battles were fast, fluid, and filled with flashy particle effects, yet the frame rate held steady even during massive mech-on-mech showdowns. The sheer amount of content, dozens of hours of story, hundreds of side quests, and a soundtrack that could have filled its own box set, made it feel like a PS3 launch title, somehow running on last-gen tech. It wasn't just an RPG, it was the PS2's swan song, proving the console could still deliver a visual and narrative spectacle right up to the end. And there you have it, 10 RPGs that didn't just run on the PS2. They thrived on it, somehow bending the console's limits without ever breaking them. These weren't the usual suspects everyone talks about. They were the hidden giants, the quiet revolutionaries, the games that made us stare at our old CRTs and think, how is this even possible? The PlayStation 2 may have been modest on paper, but in the hands of the right developers, it became a machine of pure magic. Whether you played these back in the day or you're just discovering them now, they're proof that creativity and ambition can make even aging hardware feel limitless. So maybe it's time to dust off that PS2, pop in a memory card, and relive the kind of RPG adventures we may never see again.